I will just allow 2 people in from the lobby and then we'll get going. So, okay, that's fine.
We're good to go, Layla?
Yep, we are now. Thank you. Right, this
Okay.
meeting is being held under the government regulations brought in to allow for remote meetings to take place. Hopefully those present will be able to see and hear the meeting. However, in the event of a technical failure, the chairman will adjourn the meeting and set a new time to reinstate the meeting. Please note that the meeting is being recorded. A copy of the recording will be available on the Council's committee web pages in the next few days. All members of the committee should have their video on but will remain muted until invited to speak. If you wish to attract the chairman's attention, please make use of the instant messaging function. The format of the meeting will be as per the agenda published. Thank you.
Thank you, Layla. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Sedgemoor District Council's Community Scrutiny Committee meeting. My name is Hilary Bruce, Councillor Hilary Bruce, and I'm chair of this committee. Before we move on to the main agenda, I'd just like to ask each committee member and officer taking part in the meeting to introduce themselves and confirm that they can see and hear me before we start our official business. So if I start, please, with Councillor Liz Scott.
Oh, good afternoon, Chairman. Yes, it's Councillor Liz Scott here from Axvale Ward, and I can see and hear everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Alexia Bartlett.
Hello. Yes, I can see and hear everything.
Thank you. Councillor Betty.
Good afternoon, good afternoon, Chairman. Councillor Anthony Betty here, representing the King's R Ward, and I can see and hear everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bradford.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, committee members. Councillor Alan Bradford, representing North Pleasant Ward, and I can hear and see everybody loud and clear.
Thank you. Councillor Crowe.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Yes, Councillor Crowe. I am Puritan and Wallavington. I can see and hear everybody.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson.
Hello, yeah, Councillor Lee Gibson, Eastover Ward, Bridgewater. I can hear and see you all.
Thank you. Councillor Godwin Pearson.
Hello, Graham Godwin Pearson here from Axvale Ward. I can see and hear everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Good afternoon, Councillor Phil Harvey, Burnham Central. I can see and hear you all.
Thank you. Councillor Rodriguez.
Afternoon, Councillor Rodriguez, Dunware Ward, and yes, I can see and hear.
Thank you. Councillor Wong.
Yep, this is Councillor Wong. I could see and hear everyone.
Lovely, thank you. And we have some officers present with us today. Mr. Dave Coles, the Environment Protection Manager.
Hello, yes, I'm Dave Coles. I'm the Coastal Environmental Protection Manager, and I can hear and see everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew Melhewish, who is the Scrutiny Officer.
Good afternoon, members. Good afternoon, Chair. I'm Andrew Melhewish from Democratic Services and acting as the Scrutiny Officer for the meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you. And Layla Nicholson.
Good afternoon, everybody. Layla Nicholson, Committee Manager for today.
Thank you. And I understand we have other members of Council with us today as well. Is that all that we need to do for introducing Layla?
I think possibly Dorothy O'Farrell, who's from Legal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, all. I can see and hear everything, and as Layla says, legal advice this afternoon.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bradford.
Yes, Madam Chairman. I see that Graham Godwin Pearson, is that his double or what? I can't really. Or is he trying to kick off on a high note? Which is it?
I just need to introduce Jackie Weaver.
He's not taking part in our meeting today, hopefully.
She has no authority.
Here. Read the
Okay.
standing orders, read them and understand them.
Okay, so now we've introduced everybody, I'd like to move on to the main agenda, if that's okay. And item number 1, I don't believe we have any apologies for absence, do we, Layla? I think we're all present today. Okay, and so we move on to item number 2. It's to confirm the minutes of the meetings held on the 22nd of September 2020 and 16th of November 2020. Can I ask members of the committee if they have any points they'd like to raise? No, I'll take that as no. Layla, I've got a notification come up that Councillor Wong is waiting in the lobby.
Oh, he's connected.
I do apologise. There have been some technical issues.
Okay, thank you. So as there's no points to be raised, I'll take it as confirmed that the minutes of the previous meetings can be held as a correct record of the meetings. Okay, thank you.
Agreed.
Item number 3. I don't believe we have any urgent business. Can you confirm that, Layla?
No, Chairman.
Lovely, thank you. Item number 4, public speaking time. I don't believe there are any members of the public registered to speak. Is that still correct, Layla?
That's correct, yeah.
Lovely, thank you. And are there, item number 5, are there any declarations of interest from members today? I'll take that as a no. Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the business of today. The first business item, number 6, is fireworks. So today, this item is really members are being asked, the committee is being asked to consider what can be done to reduce the impact of fireworks and to get a clear understanding of the council's position. And I think I'd like to say that we need to understand or consider what can be done, not just it's the impact of fireworks, but on animals, on people, and on the environment. Really, I think we need to consider. We have key lines of inquiry to look through, which committee members will have received with the agenda. So we have with us today Officer Dave Coles, who's the Coastal Environmental Protection Manager, and he is going to give us a bit of an overview into the background of this and the council's current position. So Mr. Coles, may I hand over to you to kick us off?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. What I'll do is I will start with a brief rundown of the legislation. I'll go through it as it is on the agenda. If you bear with me, I haven't got 2 screens, so I have to flip between the screens to get the agenda out. If you just bear with me a second. Open that up. Yes, okay. So if we start off with the legislative background, fireworks are controlled by something called the Fireworks Regulations 2004, and those introduce a number of restrictions and controls on the use of fireworks that are applicable across the United Kingdom. And these relate to things like the times when fireworks can be let off. So there are set down rules as to when people are allowed to let fireworks off, and generally it is illegal to set fireworks off in night hours, and night hours in the regulations are deemed to be between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. And there's certain exceptions to that for certain religious festivals or certain national events. So things like bonfire nights, that restriction is eased a little bit, so you can release fireworks up to 12 midnight. New Year, you can release fireworks up to 1 a.m. and things like Chinese New Year, again, you can release fireworks up to 1 a.m. And these restrictions are obviously allowed because, or these relaxations of restrictions are obviously allowed because historically people have let fireworks off at those times, and they are sort of specific, they say, special events where people are more likely to use fireworks. The regulations also input a restriction on buying fireworks. So you can buy fireworks from licensed firework dealers at any time of the year. However, there's a restriction on when they become more widely available. So if you think about the run up to, say, Guy Fawkes Night, places like Sainsbury's and Asda and so forth may be selling fireworks, and they're allowed to do that for a period of time, an extended period of time, sort of around, say, for example, if we take the Guy Fawkes Night, they can sell fireworks in registered sellers from between 15th of October to the 10th of November. So to allow people to buy their fireworks if they want to let them off, as, say, for example, Guy Fawkes Night. And there's similar relaxations for some of the other sort of national holidays or national events that the restrictions or the fireworks regulations allow you to do that. So there's controls in place for that. They also allow for a limit on noise from fireworks for category 2 and category 3 fireworks. So I'm not an expert on the categories myself, but there are a category 2 and category 3 are fireworks that, for example, people in this meeting could go out and buy. You could go to Asda, for example, or Sainsbury's, or wherever selling the fireworks around that time, and you could buy yourself category 2 and 3 fireworks, and you could let those off in your back garden, for example. And those have a noise limit of 120 decibels on them, so that they're not professional fireworks, so they're not, they don't want to sell things that are going to be too big, I suppose, for general public to let off. Category 4 fireworks, which are the big ones you see at displays. So, for example, I think there's one around the sort of Guy Fawkes Carnival time on the in Bridgewater on the Fairfield. Things that you would see there, for example, would be set off by professional people. So category 4 fireworks, you can't buy those unless you're a sort of registered licensed professional, because they're so big. If you let one off in your back garden, it probably wouldn't be it would probably be a bit dangerous, I should think. So category 4 fireworks, you can only let those off by professionals, so there's a restriction on who can buy those. And that's really it in terms of the legislation surrounding the fireworks. I mean, there's obviously other bits and pieces. So if you want to be a professional firework company, then you need to get the relevant insurance. You need to get explosive licenses from the trading standards, and there's also requirements under health and safety legislation that you need to obviously people to have relevant training and so forth to let them off. In terms of enforcement of fireworks legislation, the enforcement really falls to the police and trading standards. So the police would enforce things like people letting them off at unusual times, and they'd also enforce, for example, people throwing them around in the street or letting them off in public places. So, for example, sometimes people, I think, sort of go out into maybe they would go down the local park and let them off rather than let them off in their back garden on bonfire night. Well, you're not allowed to do that, and the police would enforce that side of things. And the trading standards guys, they obviously do licensing of people that are, professional firework letter offers, and they also license some of the shops that sell the fireworks. So in terms of us or Sedgemoor District Council's involvement in that side of things, we haven't got any enforcement powers in relation to the fireworks regulations. Like I say, it falls to the police and the trading standards guys. In terms of our role, I think that's the next bit on the agenda or the next bit of information. So our roles and powers as Sedgemoor District Council, away from the fireworks regulations, which we know are enforced by the police and so forth, we have limited powers on what we can do in terms of fireworks. So at the moment, for example, we have areas of land in Sedgemoor that that people may want to use, to set fireworks off. So take again St Matthew's Field around the time of the carnival and sort of November 5th. I think there's a firework display there. I think that's probably actually run by us. I'm not 100% sure who runs that firework display. But again, that's being set off on our land, so we have control over those sorts of things. So we could maybe say, well, we could put limits into what we thought people could do. And again, I think at Burnham-on-Sea, I'm not sure whether it's the town council or there is an organisation that lets fireworks off on the jetty at Burnham-on-Sea, which again I think is obviously managed by the council. So presumably they get permission from us to do that. So there are these areas where we have got some influence where they're let off on our land, but outside of that, our influence in terms of restricting what people can do in terms of firework displays is pretty much zero. The other element we've got is something called statutory nuisance. So I work for environmental health, so we have powers under environmental health to deal with things like noise nuisance. And we can deal with some fireworks issues for noise nuisance. The problem is it's not a straightforward thing to do. And what I mean by that is if someone was to, for example, around bonfire night, let some fireworks up in their back garden, there's probably nothing we can do about that. It's really stat nuisance would come in more if someone is persistently doing that. So if someone was letting fireworks off, you know, the big stash of fireworks in their house and they were letting them off, you know, every other weekend in their back garden, then, you know, that would, like all statutory nuisance and noise nuisances, you could look at that and say that's unreasonable. You know, there's a pattern there, it's continuing, it's ongoing and so forth. Whereas people letting them off, you know, occasionally, you know, say for example around New Year's Eve or Guy Fawkes night and so forth, then that wouldn't be necessarily something we control because it's so infrequent. Where statutory nuisance does come in is, for example, if a business, take for example a pub, for example, was having events in their on their premises, and you know every weekend part of this event, you know, if they were having weddings or something there, they were letting fireworks off, and it was becoming a persistent problem, then that's somewhere we could maybe look at under statutory nuisance. And in the past, where businesses are doing it, we have served notices putting some restrictions on when they can and can't let fireworks off. But again, the difficulty is that there's primary legislation in the form of fireworks regulations that gives people exemptions as to when they can and can't let fireworks off. So there is a balance there. So in terms of environmental health, where, you know, unless someone is doing it persistently all the time, there's very limited to what we can do to enforce against that. So going into things like complaints, so I got some complaint figures up. To be honest with you, we don't get many complaints about fireworks and environmental health. I ran the figures, or got someone to run the figures for me for the meeting. In 2017, we had 4 complaints, and those were mostly, I think one was there were 2 about the same property, and they were all around or there was a couple in not around fireworks night. So we had 2 around fireworks night, and 1 in sort of June time and 1 in July time. So we didn't get many complaints that year. 2018, again, we had another 4 complaints, and those were pretty much centered around New Year's Eve or firework night. In 2019, we had 2 complaints, and this year we had 2 complaints as well. So we're not getting a lot of complaints about it. That's not to say people aren't concerned about it. We have to put that into context, we probably get, I don't know, in terms of all of our nuisance complaints and other sort of statutory, you know, complaints that we deal with from members of the public, we do get, you know, a few thousand a year. So in terms of our actual complaint levels, that is pretty low. And like I say, the problem with a lot of the complaints that came in, there wasn't really any action we could take because it was sporadic, one-off events and one-off firework nights, parties. So we haven't got a lot of activity for us to deal with. And again, there isn't that, and some of those reduced complaint numbers may be just reflecting the fact that actually people know there's not a lot we can do about it because of the primary legislation that's in place and because people historically let fireworks off around these times. So that is the complaint levels, and I'm not sure what else is on the agenda. The next thing is resource implications to support the suggested motion. Well, I don't know whether the chairman wants to open it up for some discussion now, because I've given some background and so forth.
I think that would be a great idea. I think I'd like to invite any members that would wish to make any comments or points on this or ask any questions of Dave Coles. Would anybody like to comment? No. Councillor Bradford? You're muted, Councillor Bradford.
Apologies, the first thing I got wrong today, right? It's all very well, all these rules and laws, Dave, and all the rest of it, but it's about the police it. It's a bit like double yellow lines. You can put them anywhere, but if there ain't nobody around to police it, and sometimes things become difficult. Now, I'm a rural man, very much so, farmer, and I get quite a lot of complaints in the countryside at present regarding horses and dogs, even cats. But I do feel sometimes it's just a minority that seems to be affecting a little bit of fun for the majority. Things go over the top sometimes, and some of these grand displays, my own opinion is sometimes it's a bit OTT, and I think probably that's what causes a lot of the trouble. But there's no question about it. It is getting more of a worry in the countryside, and I'm sure Councillor Scott would back me up there. Things aren't as quiet as they used to be. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bradford. Councillor Godwin-Pearson?
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Bradford. Actually, I get a reasonably high number of emails about this at certain times of the year. It's in Axvale, you know, we got a lot of horses, we got a lot of cows, and fireworks, balloon releases, sky lanterns all seem to cause problems. Not that we get that many sky lanterns around here, but fireworks in particular seem to cause a lot of nuisance around my rural ward. I note that Swindon Borough Council has written to the government to request that in order to sell fireworks, you have to have an explosive license, which, as Dave Cobbs knows, which Somerset, so Devon, Somerset, and Torbay trading standards would organise, and it's within their remit to impose the licensing conditions. And what Swindon wants is for the government to stop the sale of fireworks over 90 decibels. Which is, 90 decibels is pretty loud, but it's not scary loud. And I wonder if we ought to consider as a council writing to the government to ask that that fireworks should only be on sale for 90 decibels or less, and that as a council in our public displays we only use fireworks of 90 decibels or lower. That would be, from what David said, our hands are tied. There's not a lot we can do in the Environment Protection Act 1990 for this because of the statutory nuisance being, relates to multiple offences, not individuals popping into Tesco and buying them. So I wonder if we can take a licensing approach with it and write to the government and ask about licensing for nationally and locally, and also suggest our local firework displays are quieter fireworks.
Thank you, Councillor Godwin-Pearson. I think that is part of the motion that's proposed by the RSPCA. They are suggesting that is a possibility to write to the government for that noise level. I would personally support that one myself. I'll go on now to Councillor Revens, and then I have Councillor Scott. Can I ask members please to put into the chat if they want to speak, because it's hard for me to get people in the right order if you're putting your hands up. Thank you.
Apologies for doing it the wrong way, Councillor Bruce. I'm not a member of the committee. I was expecting committee members to be called before me. First of all, can I just welcome Victoria Nankerville to the meeting? It was her petition that she submitted that is why it's on this agenda. And for some reason she hadn't actually been invited to this meeting, so I just managed to get in touch with her, and I see she's joined the meeting. So maybe we could welcome her, and she may wish to make some comments later with your consent, Madam Chairman. I see Democratic Services looking a little bit grumpy about that, so maybe not. Can I just extend my support to what Councillor Bradford and Councillor Godwin-Pearson have said? Particularly in the rural areas, we do see issues with fireworks, the fireworks calls with livestock. In other areas, you also see a particular problem with people who have PTSD. It's a particular problem with ex-servicemen who find it very difficult when there are explosions, especially when they're not expected. And that's the same. I've got rescue dogs myself, and it's the same similar sort of situation. That if it's November the 5th, I know it's happening, and I can respond and take measures to prevent my dogs being exasperated and made increasingly anxious by fireworks happening. It is when it is unexpected and unannounced and incredibly loud that it is a problem. So I would fully support us adopting the RSPCA motion, and I would hope that we can put that forward with all party support to full council to look at what we can do to lessen the impact on farming livestock, on residents who are vulnerable, and our general communities. It's a matter of good neighbourliness rather than really particularly being antisocial behaviour. I'm not surprised that there aren't that many complaints, because there is nothing you can do after the event about it. It does not necessarily mean that there isn't considerable community concern about this issue, and I think we do need to encourage our residents to be more considerate of those people who don't enjoy fireworks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans, and I do apologise to members of the committee. I should have said at the start of the meeting, this is my first time chairing a meeting, so I will make these rookie mistakes. Sorry. Can I hand over to Councillor Scott, please?
No. Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think you're doing a grand job. Thank you. Yes, no, I can agree with everything that's been said, actually. And also going back, maybe people aren't complaining to Sedgemoor per se, but as a ward councillor, I get an awful lot of complaints. And I have personal experience of animals being frightened. We lost a dog once because it was scared. And that was actually in July because somebody started letting off fireworks. You know, out of the season of letting fireworks out, per se. You know, so it does happen, and it does seem to happen in rural areas, whether, you know, loud noises are frightening the animals. Also people, you know, there's a lot of people with dementia have problems, you know, the PSD ones as well. And, you know, elderly people as well can be very frightened by loud noises. In fact, I live very close to Axbridge or Cheddar Reservoir, and somebody let off fireworks. It was out of season as well. In the middle of the night, it wakes us up, and you hear all the birds come off the reservoir. You know, so it's obviously upsetting wildlife. I go along with the, you know, supporting a motion of not having fireworks louder than 90 decibels. And I wonder if Dave could actually confirm that Category 4 fireworks are no louder than 120 decibel. Because a lot of these fireworks now seem to be like mortar bombs. So although they're loud, it's sort of that boom, boom, boom effect that is very disturbing. So I just wonder if he could confirm if the Category 4 ones are less than or 120 decibels. Would be interesting. Thank you.
Dave, would you like to answer that one, please? Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head. When I looked at the legislation, it seemed to indicate that Category 2 and 3 fireworks, the noise limit was 120 decibels. So whether that means that a Category 4 firework can be, I would suspect, could be louder than that, but I don't know how much by. I couldn't see it in the regulation. I mean, what I'll do, I'll double check while there's some more questions and just see if I can actually spot it in the regulation for you.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Scott, thank you. Can I move to Councillor Gibson, please?
Hello. Yeah, I think the complaints, you're not seeing as much. There are complaints all the time. It almost falls into two camps, you see, and you get hundreds of people not wanting the sound of these fireworks are just too loud, and I think it's seen as given that fireworks happen, so people don't really make these complaints, and a lot of times there's also the pollution element that like with sky balloons and things that get you know, just put into the environment, the pollution it lands as well. It's not just noise pollution, it's actual pollution in rubbish. I think the Wildlife Trust will let you know that there is a massive problem with the wildlife, that it does affect wildlife. It's not just livestock and dogs and pets. It's all animals, and it does sound, sometimes it sounds like warfare. I mean, I have problems myself with the sound. It makes me feel yeah, puts me into a different place, that's for sure. I don't mind the visual aspect of it, but the sound is quite, I find it quite scary personally. The when a lot of fireworks are going off, I've personal problems with that myself. So there are a lot of complaints out there. I just don't think you're seeing them.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Betty.
Thank you, Chairman. When I brought this up at some of my parish council meetings I went to, because a lot of the parish council meetings you seem to have complaints about fireworks, which more than what these sort of complaints we get to Sedgemoor. So I think a lot of it is that it's just one-offs, so they haven't come to Sedgemoor for it. Also, whilst I was telling them about this meeting tonight or today, a few of the councils have mentioned about the Chinese lanterns as well. So I was just wondering if the Chinese lanterns come under the same sort of regs as the fireworks do.
Thank you, Councillor Betty. I do understand that we do actually have a balloons and lanterns policy in Sedgemoor that was created in 2018. I'll let Dave Coles go on to answer your question on that.
Yeah, there is a policy on balloons and lanterns which was put in a few years back. So there is one relating to that. In terms of the firework regulations, it doesn't cover things like Chinese lanterns and things like that. It's just specifically the sort of fireworks with the pyrotechnics in them.
Okay. So I think, are there any more questions before I move on? Councillor Wong?
Yeah, I'm just trying to unmute myself. Yeah, in accordance to the government guidance in celebrating with bonfire and firework, they did specifically said that we have to be considerate to our neighbor, warn them beforehand so they can take in their considerations before we initiate any firework. I mean, are there any formal mechanism that we can consider in terms of alerting the neighbor, giving them notice, and that sort of things?
Dave Coles?
As it stands, I mean, I think you could probably ask people to do it. You could say, you know, you could do like let's say a publicity campaign, a campaign to say to people, look, give your neighbours advance warning that this is going to happen. But the way the regulations are written, there is nothing in those which requires that. There's government guidance, but that's not sort of legislative guidance. That's just sort of, you know, this is what they recommend you do, whereas the regulations don't specifically require people to give, say, 7 days notice. So you could, as part of this process, you could do, they say, a publicity campaign, a promotional campaign around firework night, or whenever it's felt good to do it, to say, you know, these are the golden rules you should do before you let fireworks off. You know, consult your neighbours, or let your neighbours know in advance. Try not to use, you know, these supersonic, massive, loud ones, and, you know, things like that. You could maybe say as a sort of you know, a suggested approach. But we wouldn't be able to enforce that. And I think to enforce something like that could be quite difficult in that, you know, how many people let in fireworks. So you think around Guy Fawkes Night, I mean, there's you know, thousands of people letting fireworks off. So I think whatever the committee thinks to do, I think you've got to have a mind for how that can be enforced, because, you know, certain things will be unrealistically able to enforce, if you see what I mean. So, for example, banning everyone letting fireworks off, I mean, that's just an extreme example, would be very difficult to enforce, because people, without restricting, say, that all the shops from selling them, people would still be able to get them, and then, you know, you'd then be chasing your tail trying to catch people after they've let the fireworks off. So, so it's probably unless the government, you know, the government can be lobbied to make some changes to the rules and reduce, you know, nationally reduce the levels of noise from these things, which, you know, if they do that, then that's probably the sort of the best approach, I suppose, because that controls it centrally, and then anything that's sold or imported into the country would have to comply with those regulations, and then maybe a way of basically, like you say, being neighbourly to people, you know, supporting good neighbours, and not just letting these things off without telling anyone.
Thank you, Mr. Coles. And also have Councillor Gibson would like to speak again.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that Councillor Wong, you said about letting your neighbours know, it doesn't really, I mean, when you let off fireworks, the whole of the neighbourhood and the whole of the town hears them in lots of ways. So I can understand that you would an education type of an education forum, and would be good to say why you'd want to reduce the sound and of fireworks and what the reasons behind that. I think that's a good thing to do. To let people know that a lot of people and a lot of animals and have a problem with having fireworks so loud.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. I think at this point, Councillor Scott.
Yes, I was just wondering actually, could Dave actually confirm people, if they're want to let off fireworks for you know, it's their birthday or something, they're able to do that before 11 o'clock at night on any day? Is one question. And the other thing is there's quite a few wedding venues around here that often let off fireworks. Again, if it's done before 11 o'clock, is that okay on any other day, or do they have to apply for a licence? Just so we can know.
My understanding is that your first question, that yeah, you can let those off any time of year up to 11 p.m. And then obviously that is extended around sort of New Year's Eve and Guy Fawkes Night to slightly later. So, you know, I could, if I had some fireworks in my garage, I could go out tonight and let them off. As long as I let them off before 11 p.m, I wouldn't be breaking the regulations. In terms of the businesses, I don't think they need separate licensing to do that. There's no licensing from us in terms of the, I did speak to the licensing manager beforehand, so we don't really license it. It may fall under things like temporary event notices if they're having a wider event, but again, they would still need to stick to the 11 p.m. cut-off. They wouldn't be allowed to let them off after 11 p.m. So yeah, so they just because they're a business doesn't mean they can let them off later than 11 p.m. other than obviously the exemptions.
Thank you, Mr. Coles. Councillor Bradford.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I've heard a lot of discussion today, etc., etc., and I wouldn't want to be named a bit of a killjoy, because people will look at it that sort of way, if you know what I'm saying. But something has to be done, and it's a very, very difficult thing to do, because I'll come back to my point to start the meeting this afternoon, that who is going to police these things? It's okay to bring all these laws in. You know, you bring laws in left, right, and centre, but unless somebody's there of authority when you need them, then the law becomes a bit of an ass sometimes, if I'm honest, right? You know, but it is becoming more and more of a problem, and it may well be that the professional people that go around doing these things need a license to do it and give warning, more or less, and that would be perhaps a step forward. More or less like planning consent to do a firework display. Why not? I know it's paper, I know it's bureaucracy, and people don't like that today, but we all got to live with each other, and nobody wants to be upsetting their neighbours. But I've had a lot of people in North Pedden come by emails, etc., in the last 6 months, I suppose, raising these sort of issues, and I'm glad the Scrutiny Committee's brought it forward. But it is a very, very difficult thing to do, to knock it on the head and say, right, we're going to stop this and stop that. That's what I feel. Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bradford. Councillor Gibson?
Thank you. But you can't warn animals. You might take precautions with pets, but you can't warn animals in the countryside. That you can't do that. And policing it, if the fireworks weren't as loud, that would be a way of getting around it. If they were made not as loud, or they didn't contribute any noise at all, that would get around it. I mean, then you wouldn't have to police it, because you know what goes on sale would be fireworks that have have less noise. You can't tell animals and people with certain ailments or conditions that there's going to be fireworks let out. People are going to still, or animals are still going to find that a problem. I think it needs to be you obviously can't police and chase people around for noisy fireworks, but you can do something at their source.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. I think at this point it seems to be that we're all fairly in support in general of the motion that was proposed by the RSPCA. Before I go on to that, I'd just like to say on Councillor Evans' point, Victoria Nankivell, who's with the meeting today, I believe that the petition that was raised, and I'll ask Andrew Mulhewish to correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the petition is still ongoing until the end of February. And I don't believe that procedures allow us to allow Victoria to speak today. So Layla, could you confirm that? And Andrew, could you confirm when the petition ends, please?
Okay, I can confirm that the petition is due to end at the end of February. And on the last download, which was on Friday of last week, there were 86 signatures to that petition. The petition trigger for is about 1,500 for it to become a matter that gets referred to council. So it is quite a low number of signatures that have been put to that petition. So I don't know whether the petition organizer would want to put some more time on the petition to see if there is more general, wider support for the proposals that were there, which were broadly in line with the RSPCA recommendations. And I'll let Mrs. Nicholson answer the matter around speaking.
Thank you.
Really, in response to that bit was the agenda gets published beforehand, 5 working days beforehand, and members of the public have got till I think midday of the day before the meeting's due to be held to register to speak. However, it is up to the chairman. If you really wanted a member of the public to speak, that really is up to you. It's your prerogative. I think if we'd heard beforehand, it probably would have been a lot easier. But I don't know whether you want to. It's your call.
Right. I think I'd probably like to offer Victoria the possibility. She'd like to ask Dave Coles any questions about the petition in terms of what. Dave Coles, have you had a chance to read the petition and know the contents of it?
I had a quick look before the meeting, yes.
Would you be happy to answer any questions that Victoria might have of you?
Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
Okay, Layla, are we allowed to, is that okay then?
Yep. Let's just say it's your prerogative. That's absolutely fine.
Hello, Victoria. Welcome to the meeting. I'm just going to allow you briefly, if you'd like to ask any questions of Dave Coles technically about the petition. Obviously, it's still ongoing, so no decisions made or anything.
Thank you. Thank you very much for letting me join and talk to you all. I very much appreciate your time. Is there a way for, sorry, can I call you Dave? Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. Is there a way for Dave to forward the petition to all of you in the group to share with your communities, those that are opposed to fireworks, that could help push the petition forward?
Yeah, we could do that because it's the petition is on the agenda, and I think that the committee services guys will probably have details of that.
Yeah, sorry, that's my domain there, so I'll take over from Dave. Normally with petitions, it would be down to the petition organizer to promote it and publicise it. The last one that we had that reached a trigger point was a petition around planting more trees around Sedgemoor in response to the climate emergency. So the organizer of that did do quite a concerted campaign through Facebook and other social media outlets, and as a result of that, attracted a high number of signatures to that petition. So I think whilst we have accepted the petition, we have to remain slightly independent from it, not necessarily being seen to be promoting the petition. So it's really down to as I say, to you as the petition organizer to promote that petition. And as I said earlier, if you wanted to extend the period in which it ran, that could be done beyond the current period, which I think was originally set at 3 months.
Thank you.
Okay, Victoria, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So can I ask, oh, sorry, Councillor Bradford.
Sorry, Madam Chairman. Could I just ask Victoria a question? Your name's familiar. You come from North Petherton, don't you?
I'm in Stockmore. Yes,
Stockmore,
I've met you
that's
before,
correct.
Alan.
You sent me an email back 4 or 5 months. You did, yeah, you're dead right, yeah. I'm just okay, yeah. Stockmore, been that area. It's quite a heavily populated area, and
yes,
fireworks there would cause considerable, yeah.
Yes.
It really would. Yeah.
Councillor Bradford, if you'd like to make
put
contact with Victoria outside of the meeting, that would be ideal.
But nice to put a name to a face, or a face to a name. I know which it is. All right.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Yeah.
Ditto.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Andrew Mulhewish, if possible, to share his screen on the proposed motion of the RSPCA.
Yep, I'm just about to get my screen shared with you, all members. Here goes. Hopefully that can be seen now.
My connection's a bit slower. Mine's through now. Okay.
Yep. Okay. There's the 4 points of the motion suggested by the RSPCA, and I think it's also worth pointing out to members that Somerset West and Taunton later in the latter part of 2020 took a similar motion to their council with similar wording to the one that you see displayed on your screens. So I mean, if you are minded to, you can use the wording of that, or if you wanted to elaborate on any points, that could be done. One of the things that did get mentioned earlier in the meeting was the balloon and lantern release policy. That was a policy that was adopted and supported by the executive 2 years ago, and it is due to be reviewed on every 2 years. And it's whether some of what is contained in that could also form a more wider policy. So you have one that covers balloon and lantern release and fireworks with some of those points in. And it may be that you might want to give consideration to bringing the balloon and lantern release policy back to a future scrutiny meeting to look at it and review it, and whether then incorporate into that something around the firework displays. But I'll leave that for you as members to decide. But there's the wording for you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Godwin Pearson, I know you asked earlier for your proposal, for your suggestion of a proposal. You wanted to speak now?
It was only to say I wonder why this motion proposed by the RSPCA doesn't include our own firework displays to feature fireworks of 90 decibels or less.
Obviously, this is a national campaign from the RSPCA. So, I mean, you could, as I say, the balloon and lantern release is a specific policy which covers events that happen on our land. So that's why I'm saying that the kind of incorporation of some wording around fireworks in that would then tie and link. So it probably broadens out what's already here about the 90 decibels. You then could have a specific policy within your own within that, so you become sort of say a lantern, firework and balloon release policy. You could then specify that when they're on council-owned land, that they should be no more than 90 decibels. Obviously, there are certain things that we will be able to more easily control when they're on events that are taking place on our land, as opposed to other people's personal private events, which you can still ask for the controls that are set out there in the motion. But obviously we can be a little bit more specific, so that then when someone comes to us and says we want to hire X park to hold this event and we're going to release fireworks, you can then say, well, you can do so, but you have to give us proof and evidence as part of the booking arrangements that you will not use fireworks that are any more than 90 decibels. And obviously you would then have to give publicity to the local community, whether that be through social media or something, or placing an advertisement in the local paper. But you could have those kind of specifics in your booking arrangement, so as part of that booking agreement, if a policy was adopted that way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think it is becoming apparent that we need, as Sedgemoor, we need to be clear on our position with regard to fireworks within the district and on our own land. So I do think that having a policy on fireworks is the good direction to go in. I would suggest that we take on this motion from the RSPCA. I think on the first point, for me, there would be, it does say to be advertised in advance of the event. I would like to see that specified to at least 7 days in advance of the event. And on the second point, it says about promoting a public awareness campaign about the impact of fireworks on animal welfare and vulnerable people. I think we need to include the environment in that statement as well. The noise level of fireworks to 90 decibels, and to encourage local suppliers of fireworks to stock quieter fireworks for public display. Possibly also something about the clear labelling of fireworks in terms of what noise they have would also be useful. So can I ask members if we're ready at this point to agree on a proposal to put forward this motion and to request the creation of a policy on fireworks, which is either incorporated into the lanterns policy or a separate policy, depending on what is actually practically possible. Are members in agreement with that? So I'm taking silence to mean there's agreement. Does anybody not agree with that proposal? Okay. Mr. Malhewish, are we okay at this point to take that forward in that form?
Yes, Chair, you are. I believe you do have another speaker though, Councillor Gibson. Sorry,
I couldn't see it with the screen share. Councillor Gibson.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. I was just wanted you to make it a bit more clear about, you said about the pollution aspect, and what roundabout will that you would make it would be, there would be something in there to say that it actually does cause, there's a lot of debris that falls to the ground, in the countryside, in the towns. Would that be the pollution aside the noise pollution? Is that what you mean?
I think that would be something that would be incorporated into the policy. Am I right in thinking that, Mr. Coles? Is that something that would be looked at in terms of developing a policy?
Yeah, I mean, we can have a look at what that would entail. Yes, we'd have to obviously look at how you control that, because obviously once someone fires a firework up in the air, it explodes and the bits go everywhere. So it could be difficult to yeah, unless I'm not an expert on fireworks, so there may be fireworks that you can buy which have biodegradable parts in them and pieces like that. I think that's the issue, is that we'd have to look at that in more detail, because like I say, once they shoot up in the air and explode, it's going to be very difficult to find the bits again, I should think.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Godwin-Pearson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think the RSPCA motion is clearly well considered. And thinking about it, were we to make the authorised, organised Sedgemoor displays and Burnham Town Council displays quieter, then the danger is, I think, that members of the public might go out and seek very loud fireworks for themselves and set them off on private land, and so I think we need a sort of a bit of whiz bang for the big firework displays at November the 5th and so on that the local authorities organise, but perhaps the RSPCA knows that, and that's why they've worded the motion in this way, so that the decibel limit applies to private displays.
No, it's not. It's because they haven't got control.
I believe it's up to the council on its own land what limit it sets. So it really is us as a committee, or the council has to decide what that limit will be. I'm not sure that is for this committee today to decide that.
Yeah. Well, perhaps it's something we can revisit with the balloons and sky lanterns release, and just consider the private land proposal that the RSPCA put forward.
Okay. Councillor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was just on point 4 of the motion, which is about encouraging businesses. I just wondered, what perhaps does that mean in practical terms? Because it's all good and well, but I was wondering what sort of workload that means for the council. What would they potentially have to do to encourage businesses? There's lots of businesses they're going to have to encourage. So maybe there's any examples or any suggestion as to what that means in practical terms.
Mr. Coles.
Yeah, it'd probably be I suppose, press release and something along those lines, because we wouldn't have any, like I say, enforcement powers to stop them. So it'd be some sort of publicity awareness. So maybe using Twitter and tweeting, and if there are business contacts, places like Sainsbury's or some of these bigger places that sell them. So I mean, we'd have to have a look at it. So I don't know 100%, but I doubt. I shouldn't think it would be going to visit every premises to tell them, to ask them about it. It'd probably be more of a mail shot or press release and some stuff on social media, I would suggest.
Okay. So if there are no more comments on that, I would propose then that we ask. Sorry, Councillor Scott.
Yeah, sorry, I was a bit late asking. Maybe we ought to, when we write to the government urging them to limit the maximum noise level, perhaps that's where we should put the 90 decibel in, because it's all very well saying maximum noise level, but we need to perhaps have a figure. If 90 decibels is the right figure, that's what I'm a bit unsure of.
Okay, Mr. Coles, the figure put forward of 90 decibels by the RSPCA, is there a way that we can verify if that's a correct figure?
It's very difficult to say, but I think Councillor Scott is probably right that you probably want to go to them with I mean, I should suspect that the RSPCA have looked into it and that they know that this is something which is going to cause less distress to animals and people and so forth. So, and I think it may be what other councils have suggested as well, maybe. But I do think, you know, the way you're going in terms of actually, yes, let's write to the government and try and get the problem tackled at source, rather than trying to implement local things, is probably going to be your most. Having been involved in enforcement for quite a long time, that's probably your most effective way of doing it. Because if you can restrict the decibel level that they're allowed to manufacture and sell at and import into the country at, for example, then you've effectively solved your problem straight away, because anyone who buys them, unless they're buying them illegally, is going to be compliant. Whereas if you try and implement something without that, then, like I said before, it's going to be incredibly difficult to determine whether someone has got a 90 decibel or 120 decibel firework, because once they've let it off, there ain't anything left of it, and unless you can find an effective way of monitoring it while they're letting them off. So I think, I mean, I could see what you could do with, I suppose, with the council-owned land. You could require, like you've said, I suppose, that they provide you documentary evidence that the fireworks they're going to let off on your land will not be above X decibels. So you could control it that way. But I think generally you probably want to be targeting this sort of lobbying thing with central government, because if you can control the problem at source, then that means that you don't have to try and hunt down everybody who's letting off fireworks, because you know that unless they purchased them illegally, they'll be at the right level.
Okay. So at this point, I would say that we are in a position really to accept the motion that the RSPCA has proposed and put that forward, and ask for a policy to be created for Sedgemoor on fireworks. Andrew, is that okay at this point to put that forward as it is?
Yes, that's fine, Chair. I think whether you want to, as I said earlier, whether there's wanting to be linkage to the balloon and lantern one, so there's a combined document, you could bring that back to your next meeting to look at that and then incorporate the two things there together. And it would also give some opportunity just to check some of the sort of the technicalities around the decibel levels, that kind of thing, to make sure that they are appropriate.
I think it would be good if
can be reasonably, suggested to people who are coming forward to use, do displays, etc.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think it'd be good if Mr. Coles, if you could look and see whether it's possible to incorporate into a single policy, or whether we do need to have two separate ones, and bring that back to a future meeting. Okay, great. I think on this subject, we need to accept that a lot of our role is going to be in terms of educating the public. Our hands are tied for some of it, so it's about getting the right balance and making sure that people can enjoy firework displays, because it does bring a lot of joy to people and we need that joy at the moment. But it does also cause considerable impacts really on animals, the environment, on vulnerable people. So we need to strike the right balance. And hopefully we can do that. We have the ability to run campaigns to increase public awareness. We have the ability to lobby government for the right legislation, and we have the ability to offer guidelines to people and help people to move in the right direction. So I think that's where we should be going to. Councillor Godwin-Pearson, do you want to add something?
Yeah, thank you. Can I just clarify that the RSPCA motion says that to write to the government urging them to introduce a limit to the maximum noise of 90 decibels for those sold to the public for private displays.
Yep.
So sold to the public for private displays. Just want to make sure that we've got that distinction.
Yep.
So we don't take the fun out of the public displays, which are very well organised and locals are notified about those sorts of things. Just want to make sure we've thought through this logic so that we're talking only about fireworks that are available for sale to the public in supermarkets and other retailers for their own use on private land.
That is my understanding. Is that in agreement with all members? Okay, I take that as everyone's agreed to that. Okay, thank you. Andrew, are we okay to move on now to the next item?
Yes, please.
Okay, lovely.
And that will probably be me anyway.
Yeah, so we're looking at the work programme. Andrew's agreed to sort of just go over again. So we've got the work programme sent to us for March. Andrew's just going to go over that and hopefully also give us a quick overview of how you can submit your proposals for what we should include in the future programme. Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. So we have the work programme. I will just display my screen because then it's easier just to have that up on the screen in front of us all. Just bear with me a second. Okay, so we've got the work programme, obviously, with today's item on there of fireworks. Coming up at the March meeting is going to be receiving an overview on neighbourhood plans. We also have an update potentially on fracking, although that is particularly quiet at the moment. I don't think it's featuring at all in any sort of government plans. One of the other things that is likely to be featuring, following the recent approval of the some of our own Sedgemoor climate emergency plan and the action plan that has been through scrutiny and executive and is due to go to the full council meeting on the 22nd of February for final member sign off. Coming out of some of those discussions, there was a talk around declaring an ecological emergency for Sedgemoor. And what I'm going to do is for the next meeting, if members are happy to receive that, I'm going to get Anna Mears to do some work on what exactly that means, the implications and so on. So to bring something back, a fuller piece of work as to whether the next step is to ask council to support declaring an ecological emergency for Sedgemoor. So that's that on the work programme front. There may be some other items that come forward, and I'm going to sort of just talk very briefly about items coming onto scrutiny, how for members and how they get them onto scrutiny. So I'm just going to go down. It's already included in the report that you have in front of you, but it's here up on the screen. So it's looking at identifying what topics are suitable for scrutiny. And I think it's important that, you know, it's where you can have an impact and add value, and also where there's local importance and also the concerns of local people. And I think that sort of the firework item that we've just had, it does demonstrate that there's obviously national campaigns and there's also public concern, and members themselves have had contact from people in their communities and parishes coming forward. So there'll be those kind of things that those kind of issues that you're sort of hearing when you're out in your communities and speaking to your parish and town councils in your areas. There may be some issues which come forward that have that impact on the community, and it may be something that scrutiny would want to look at. And I think what there would need to be is a discussion where where something would come in, either being raised here, or there is another process where you can raise something with the chair of the committee, and we can then do an email around to say, do we want this, members, do you want this matter to come before scrutiny? I think it's worth just saying that obviously where issues are already being addressed elsewhere, where there are decisions which relate to legislation, that's already going to be coming in, that kind of thing, it may be that it's not appropriate for scrutiny to get involved in that, and obviously not to have topics that are too broad that you just can't focus on the detail. and you end up spending a high number of meetings just discussing things and perhaps not coming to sort of suitable outcomes. So as I say, the first port of call would be for an item to come forward to be raised, and then behind the scenes officers would then look through what those issues that have been raised were, and then come back and see if they can be scoped up into the key lines of inquiry that you've seen today before you in the firework item. So that's just a very quick sort of whiz through of how to get things on. So you can do that and raise that here, as I say, or alternatively via email outside of the meeting, and they can be, as I say, then assessed and make sure that there are some resources. That's the other thing we need to do. Make sure we've got some officer resource, some officer specialism that can provide the support to do that. It's just worth pointing out that whilst our current scrutiny officer is on maternity leave, we are shortly going to be appointing some graduates into the authority, and the intention will be from time to time when we need support, when the scrutiny committee or both scrutiny committees need support to carry out a piece of research work and a piece of review work, then we will call on their resources to be able to conduct some of those some of that research and get that background information together, and then I'll come back and with the relevant officers present the information as we have done today. So I'm happy to take any questions on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Melhuish. Any questions, members? Was I muted? Sorry. Councillor Scott?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure if this would be relevant to discuss. I know we have spoken before about antisocial behaviour, and we had a report, but Cheddar Gorge was and is probably going to again next summer, going to experience an awful lot of problems with boy racers in their cars. This has been suggested to me that they are arranging sort of big car meets, and this is going all over the country. People come from all over the place. It has an impact on us here in Axbridge because cars speed up and down the bypass going from Cheddar, plus Cheddar Gorge being in the ANOB. The police actually are heavily involved, but is that something that we could take up as follow up for our residents in this area?
Yes, I know that Rob Semple in our community and wellbeing team has been working on this matter for some time. So yeah, I can speak to him and see about getting an update on the progress of where negotiations and discussions are. I think between ourselves, the police and businesses affected in the Cheddar area. So there is a piece of work being undertaken, and I'll seek an update and schedule that into one of the future meetings.
That's
Sorry,
great.
I should add, I will schedule that into a future meeting if members are happy that that's a future meeting. Sorry, I'm making assumptions here. Sorry.
Thank you. That sounds
Thank
good
you.
to me. Okay. Anybody else? Any questions for Mr. Melhuish or any suggestions for the work programme? Councillor Gibson?
Yeah, hello, thank you. This might not be our remit really, but I'm really overly concerned still about the amount of plastics that supermarkets are allowed to sell with their products. I mean, they sell plastics. I just wondered, can we do anything at all to look at this, or to it is a problem. It is a problem for everybody, but it is still a problem for us in our community that that the plastics get sold, and okay, they get, you know, recycling is a short-term solution, very short-term solution. Things, you know, plastics tend to usually just get buried or burnt or put in the ocean. and it is a big ongoing thing that's going to suck us all down, and I just wondered, is there anything that we can do at all as community scrutiny, because it's just it just doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. I know plastics and containers are a massive business in this country and throughout the world, and so's recycling is a massive business. I just wondered if there was anything we can do at all about that.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. I think, to be honest, work is already ongoing with the Sedgemoor Climate Emergency Action Plan. Recycling and waste is a major topic in there, and plastics and pollution will all be part of that. Whether it crosses over a bit with the ecological emergency as well, that may be a possibility, but work is definitely ongoing, and we're expecting the working party on the climate emergency strategy, both from Sedgemoor and from Somerset County, to report back to Scrutiny, for there to be constant monitoring on the progress of the action plan and where we are. So I think that's where community scrutiny will come in. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Malhewish, I think that's probably our scope there, is to look at the work that's ongoing with that strategy and the action plan, and to make sure it's on track and work is actually taking place. And I think that's our role in it.
Yes, absolutely right, Chair. As I say, I've got to speak to Anna Mears regarding the ecological emergency, so I will discuss with her. Obviously, there's quite a number of measures contained within the climate emergency that will be coming forward to Council, as I said earlier. And I know that the Somerset Waste Partnership do considerable amount of work to lobby with sort of food retailers around their packaging and making sure to minimise the amounts of plastics that are being used, and that's an ongoing campaign that they've been running with for many years. So I think that, coupled with what we'll be including within our own climate emergency and our action plan, is something that will come back to Scrutiny. And again, as I say, we'll see how that fares for coming forward to a future meetings. It sounds like members are happy to support that.
Thank you. Councillor Scott?
Yes, I would be happy to support that, because I think the ecological emergency may bring up some of these issues, especially with regard to things like littering, because there's an awful lot of littering that's taking place, and I think that's got a huge ecological disadvantage. Thanks.
Thank you. And I would strongly invite any members really with concerns about the climate emergency strategy or anything to contact Anna Mears and feed in directly with any queries or suggestions in terms of what's currently in the strategy and the action plan. Like it was highlighted, it's a live working document, the action plan, so please do feed back in directly if possible. Any other suggestions or comments on this item? No? In that case, I think it's time to declare the meeting closed.